Welcome back to the Clara CFO Group channel. Today we are interviewing an HR professional, Niki Ramirez of HR Answers, and she's going to be answering lots of questions for us about HR. So if you are a small business owner, you're in the right place. This channel is all about helping you succeed financially and just in business all around with your small business. And we are here dedicated to helping you figure out how to grow your business, how to make it become exactly what you want it to be, and how it can help you achieve your personal and professional goals. So with that, we hire employees, and sometimes we need to get help in managing employees, and that's where the HR function comes in. And there's lots of questions around HR. Sometimes it gets misconstrued for accounting, and sometimes the line gets a little bit blurred. So I was like, you know what? I need to bring on an HR professional, and we need to talk through lots of different questions with her. So we're going to get right into the interview, and be sure to watch the whole thing because she sprinkles gold throughout the entire interview. So you're going to really love Nikki. She is got tons of great information. So definitely check out the description box as well, because we've linked how you can get in touch with her or how you can watch her YouTube channel in the description box. So definitely check that out. All right, well, here's the interview with Nikki. Welcome, Nikki, to the Clara CFO Group channel. I'm really excited to have you here today.
Thanks, Hannah. It's awesome to be invited.
Yeah, so you've been on the channel before. So Niki Ramirez from HR Answers. We're really I believe we've had you on to talk about maybe some of the stuff around the Affordable Care Act and some of our, COVID paid sick leave. I remember we talked about that. You were a very helpful resource. And so we just finished we're wrapping up a series that we've done on for people who are starting to hire employees, and they're thinking about benefits, and they're thinking about what do they need to do to support their employees. And I was thinking, I have this great HR resource in my network. I need to talk to Nikki because I think HR is a part of small business that starts, and really any business. A lot of people don't really know what it is, and they don't know when they need it. They don't know what HR is, and they might be confusing it with other things. So I would like to we're gonna start there. But before that, if you could give us like a really high level, introduce yourself to everybody here on the channel, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into some questions about HR.
Okay, sounds good. Sounds good. Like I said, I'm excited to be here. Just talking about HR in general is where I love to spend my time. So it's a fantastic opportunity to visit about something that is definitely impactful in business. Finding the right HR help and getting things going at the right time is key. But so I'm Niki Ramirez. I'm the founder of HRAnswers.org. We're an Arizona-based HR consulting firm. And our team supports primarily service-based businesses all across the country with all sorts of HR initiatives, which this will be sort of like a teaser into what is HR, right? So we help our clients with things like employee handbooks that not only help to ensure compliance in the business, but also line up with their business culture. We help develop job descriptions and work through compensation, market analysis, and things like that. So where someone is working with you to decide what they can afford, we're often chiming in from the other end of the court saying, okay, and what's the market doing? What does it look like to build a position like that in your business right now? And how does that flow through from a workflow perspective? So we analyze workflows. We look at compliance topics like how to build out paid sick leave policies that meet local and state guidelines. And then, of course, our team helps with really sticky hiring and firing situations. So when employee relations questions come up, that's most often when we're handling client questions and jumping in to support in their businesses.
Awesome. And I mean, that's the type of stuff that it really helps to have somebody who knows how to handle those situations. If you've never been in that situation as a business owner, and all of a sudden you're thrown into an employee situation that you never anticipated, right? HR can definitely come in and help on that. So let's kind of get into the first question. Is really high level. What is HR? I think we probably need to say it stands for human resources, HR. So we'll start there. We can, there's lots of acronyms in the finance and HR world, but HR stands for human resources. But what does the function encompass, and really what is it from a high level?
Yeah, so HR is definitely an umbrella term. So human resources is an industry, and it's a whole entire function within a business that can be broken down into many separate areas. And so the easiest way for me to sort of paint this picture or think about it so that it's easy for people to see in their own business is to talk about it from an employee life cycle, perspective. I got tongue tied. So when we think about the different functions within human resources, the first thing that we do in order to attend to human resources is determine what compliance issues we need to be aware of in our business. So labor and employment regulations. So labor and employment compliance is one part of HR. From there, then we might be ready to hire employees. And so we might look at recruiting strategy. And then, which is like marketing for HR. It's a marketing activity, recruiting. Then we might be thinking about interviewing, which is another piece of the HR function, which is both compliance driven and meets the needs of a business owner who wants to get to know people that they might want to hire. So recruiting, interviewing, hiring and onboarding is another piece of HR. So we want to make sure we collect the right information to both maintain compliance and have a good handle on who our employees are and how they support our business. So demographics and things like that, forms like I-9s and W-4s and all that kind of good stuff fall into hiring. From there, another function within human resources is employee performance management. And so that's where we really set the tone and come up with strategy and techniques for discussing expectations, accountability, and issues. So we're talking performance management, which leans into the employee relations function, which is really dealing with either the reactive side of employee relations. So I've hired someone and they're not meeting my expectations performance-wise, or they're displaying conduct that does not align with my values or my expectations. They're acting up a bit. So the employee relations function, reactive, is to deal with those problems, attend to them, communicate expectations, that good stuff. On the proactive side, there's a whole proactive side of employee relations.
Yeah.
Surprise, right? Which is like employee surveys, contacting people to talk about fulfillment and satisfaction on the job, helping, build out positions and work culture that is enjoyable. That's the positive side of employee relations. And then life cycle wise, we are also probably inserting some sort of benefits management too, probably earlier in the cycle. I kind of skipped over it, which is probably my own, my subconscious. I don't love administering benefits. We lean on our broker friends and PEO friends to do that. So building out benefit programs and perk programs is important too. Administering them, of course, is important. So having a way to keep on top of all those tasks and details with your employees in terms of like, when's enrollment time? How do we do that? So administering employment programs. And then, of course, separation is a part of human resources. And we know that that's from an employee relations perspective and specifically the kind of work that we do often with our clients. That's where we really dig in and say, okay, what is leading us to need to involuntarily terminate someone? Is that a good idea? Or what steps should we be considering before terminating? Or more simply, handling resignations. That's also a function of employee separation and termination. So that's sort of like all the different buckets, parts of the HR industry. And there's really probably more to it if we were going to get more detailed. But high level, those are our main areas.
Yeah, making sure that employees coming in are, well taken care of, that any of their issues are addressed, that they have, the information that they need to be successful as an employee. And then also that the management also is able to, how they relate to the employees is such a huge part. That makes a lot of sense. Would you rope payroll into HR?
Negative.
No.
Really
finance task.
It is a finance function. Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah. The processing of payroll is a function of finance and accounting. The design of compensation strategy does dip into the HR space. And the design of benefit programs dips into HR, but funding and administering benefits might even fall into accounting and finance responsibility sometimes, especially in small business.
Yeah. And I can tell you guys like practically how this looks. So as a CFO, I'll have a client that comes and says, hey, we need to hire a research assistant that has, 2 to 3 years of experience. And then I say, okay, great. Like, here's our, cost spreadsheets that we can figure out like what we need to plan for as far as like, all the costs that we know that go into this role. And then it will become, well, what can we pay this person? And then I can say, well, you can afford X, Y, Z. This is what you can afford, but we need to know the market rate. So a lot of times we'll go to, sometimes it's your firm, Nikki, where, because we do have clients, some of the same clients where we'll say, well, actually we need to do a compensation analysis on this job for this market. And then we get these really awesome reports that give us a range of reasonableness for for this position based on a job description. And then we can plug that into our financial model. And I found that to be so helpful because it gives an anchor in reality to some of our business owners when they're trying to make financial plans. And that's been hugely helpful for me to be able to always know that is a tool that we can go to. And then we know we're paying a fair wage. We're pricing our services appropriately when we're actually paying market wages, and we're not just like trying to lowball somebody into getting like the best price possible. So
or responding to an employee, you're making an offer and a potential new employee saying, no, I want X amount, which is completely out of the ballpark, right? You know that they've got this benchmark data to say, well, based on current real market information, like real points of data, we're not just estimating or guessing. The systems that we use are updated quarterly now too. So they went from 2 times a year update to 4 times a year because of the volatility in the wage market right now. So you can really say like, this is really what's happening in the market, in this industry, in this position. Now what's reasonable? And and often on our side of the table in HR, we're working with our clients to design the job duties and the workflows and the essential functions and all that good stuff. And then we're doing the market compensation. And then I kind of go, okay, now are you going to take this to your financial expert to tell you what you can afford? And then you can come up with your hiring range and strategy. We finalize the strategy.
Yeah. So, I mean, finance and HR definitely have some crossover, and they're also complementary in a lot of ways. So we like our HR professionals. Definitely. They make everything better. Now, when a company is growing, let's say they're just going from, just a solopreneur to they're starting to hire their first a couple of employees. Like, when do they really need to start thinking about adding some kind of HR function?
Yeah. So maybe if we just think about, again, the fact that HR is broken up into so many different areas. So off the top of my head, right away, we need to be planning for payroll compliance and wage and hour compliance. And so maybe you're working with a payroll company or a PEO to set up your payroll processing systems, your onboarding system. Because just for example, there's like a new hire reporting law in every state that you have about 20 days to report to the state when you hire a new employee. Most employers don't do in-house payroll, even tiny employers, or maybe especially tiny employers with 1 or 2 or 5 employees. We outsource it, right? That outsourced solution will be filing those reports on our behalf. So we're entering the employee information into their system, and it's magically going to the agencies it needs to go to. So you have to be thinking about it before you hire your first employee, to put it simply.
Yeah.
There has to be at least a sort of a cursory review of what rules and regulations apply, like in Arizona where I sit. And of course, I think we're well over 25 states now that have paid sick leave laws, lots of local ordinances for sick leave. Those ordinances and laws often apply to employers with 1 employee.
Yes. Yeah. So I had that happen because Seattle has a paid sick leave situation, and one of my employees was in Seattle. So yes. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think, to really folks who are interested in moving from that solopreneur model to having a statutory employee, a W-2 employee, they really need to be thinking about HR from the onset. And it doesn't have to be giant or scary or anything that causes worry. There are definitely ways to sort of methodically look at what's needed in the business based on the size, based on the industry. And so we often help clients, even those clients that have never hired an employee. We have a project that we work on called an employer launch project. And it is specifically for people who have 0 employees
Oh,
and they're
there you go.
prepping to hire. Yeah, I've just finished up a project right now with a mental health practitioner who's going to hire her first clinician. And it's so great to be able to capture a plan, to really set a plan in place, even at that time. Or if you're just in the 1 or 2 employee phase, same thing. We go through and analyze what rules apply. Every state has a Department of Labor type website. So if you're a DIYer, get out there, find your state's Department of Labor. They probably have just an employer FAQ page. That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, taking a look at that, people often ask too, when should I think about putting together an employee handbook? So same thing, anytime you have an employee, they're going to have questions and you should have answers ready for them, and policies help us have answers ready. So probably because I run and operate an HR consulting firm, of course, I had a handbook ready before I hired my first employee, and I advocate for that for anyone. Is it realistic? Are you working on other things in your business? Probably, but
you happen to have, probably already had a few that you knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted. Yeah. But, we are just humans working with humans. And whether you work in a company that has 1 employee or 100 or 1,000 employees, the same questions come up and the same decisions have to be made. And so we should be ready to create that framework so it's easy to work with our employees.
So one question we come up with a lot, and I hear it a lot on the channel and people who are watching the channel is, I have employees, I pay them on a 1099. So we've done videos explaining the difference between employees and 1099s, because if you're paying on a 1099, technically they're a contractor.
Right.
Does HR cover contractors ever? Is that?
Not really. No, not if we're going to be compliant with the IRS sort of definition, and the Department of Labor. The U.S. Department of Labor has a way that they look at that relationship. So no. So if an employee is truly an employee and we've asked them to fill out that W-4 at the time of hire, they're not receiving the 1099. They get the W-2 at the end of the year. Those 1099ers, those independent contractors, they don't get a copy of the handbook. They don't come to employee training. They don't go to team meetings. They might go to project meetings, but they don't, they're not participating in the business in the same way.
Yeah. I think it's really good to just remind people of that, because I think a lot of people are doing this sort of like staff augmentation and hiring lines to sort of like fill in really critical roles in the business, and really think what they want is they want an employee. And then sometimes they're treating them like employees and having them sort of like operate under this sort of function when they really should be treated as contractors. So that's like a whole different,
we could go on, for a long time.
We won't go dive too much into that, but I did want to just like brush on it.
No, there are lots of options. And that's an important part of the process when we're building a small business and growing and, really focusing on profitability. We want the right talent in the right time, doing the right work, and it can evolve over time. And that's the wonderful thing about small business, especially. It evolves as we need it to. We get to design it to, meet the demands of the market. So using independent contractors is great. Having employees is wonderful.
Yeah, I agree. So I've got a couple questions here that are, and we got to see a little cameo of your dog, which is wonderful.
I feel like my family probably moved around out in the other room. And so he was interested in knowing what was happening.
Yes, of course. Mine's clip-clopping around out there somewhere. So we kind of talked about a couple like baby steps when somebody's getting started. So make sure payroll is compliance, and then probably having a handbook in place. Any other baby steps that we should kind of be thinking of as we're building and starting on an HR path?
Yeah. I think having job descriptions in place is important. Job descriptions from an HR perspective include things called essential functions. So what are the actual tasks that comprise the job that are not negotiable? They cannot be taken out of the job, or the job would be different. The title might change. The compensation structure might change if we remove any essential functions. So it's really what we want, a job description that tells us that, so that we can plan comp, so that we can look at workflows. And as our businesses grow, if we need to consider making an accommodation for an employee who maybe has a disability or a special medical need, those essential functions remain intact, even with disability accommodations. And that's something that even for small employers, I purposefully mention it. It's a big topic, but it's a really important one to have on our radar. When we hire folks, we want to have well-designed jobs with clear expectations. And so the baby step is, let's design the role. Let's make sure we're clear on the deliverables and the outcomes. Let's also talk about what skills are necessary for the job and what qualifications somebody might need in order to hold that position. So job description. And then thinking about just leading and managing. That's a huge part of the HR, world. So managing performance, helping people get comfortable with the idea of talking about performance is something I want people to think about as a baby step. Because I want us to imagine ourselves in the future, which is really hard to do as human beings. But I want us to, as we start to employ people, I want us to really start to think about how to have tough, crucial conversations or difficult conversations where, maybe the stakes aren't super high. It's not time to terminate, but I feel like things aren't going as I thought they were. They're kind of a little bit out of alignment, and I need to check in without scaring somebody off. So start to build your skills in that area. We do a lot of coaching and training with our clients on how to have those conversations and how to organize information so that the employee can participate openly and positively rather than becoming defensive. So starting to think about how you'll talk about performance and things like that is also an important baby step.
Yeah, that is huge because the hiring can start to feel so daunting. And then when you have really clear job descriptions and you have, you feel like you're in a different level of confidence going into the hiring process, because there's a lot of questions that get asked of you, even from candidates and things. And so being able to really spell out the job, and it doesn't feel like it's sort of being built on the fly is helpful. The other thing is what I realize is people start hiring, and then about a year in, they go, oh yeah, I should probably do some kind of performance reviews or something. I should probably figure this out. And then, sometimes they ask me that, and it goes, because we talk about lots of things in our strategy meetings.
For sure.
And this is where it's it's not really my finance function. I can just tell you what I see, but really designing a review process that feels authentic to what you guys are doing internally, but also is really fair to the employees. And it's also giving them timely feedback. So you don't get a year in and you're like, oh, your employee wasn't doing a great job, but you only have one touch point a year. There's so much more we can do to be good leaders. Right. And I think having a well-designed performance is great.
And it's built, the performance evaluation system is built off of so many tiny steps that we design along the way. So one-on-one check-ins and, quarterly reflections and all sorts of things that you can build again so that it's authentic for your business. And that's, always our goal is to look at people use that term best practice. The best practice is to talk with people often about how they're doing, how you are viewing their performance. The best practice is to talk about it. What's your most natural style? And then let's build out the system. So there's lots of ways to tackle that, need to communicate, but we want to do it also. One of the words that I use, especially talking about performance evaluation, is what's practical for your business. What will you really follow through with? Because if you design a system that has 14 steps and, 11,000 boxes to check and all kinds of paragraphs to write, nobody's going to actually do it. And then it's going to fall by the wayside. How about if we really just do some, values and job alignment and talk about those key concepts with our employees to say in our business, we value client service. One of your job responsibilities is handling incoming inquiries from the public. How are we doing there? Let's just focus on these key concepts. Let's not make it cumbersome and difficult. Let's make it practical.
Yeah, I love that.
Doing something is always better than doing nothing or overcompensating it.
Yes. And I think that's a barrier for a lot of people is it feels like it's going to need to be complicated. And I'd say that in finance too. It's let's keep it really simple.
Yeah.
We don't have to make something overly complicated. It doesn't make it better because it's complicated.
No. And we even had an employer that we're working with right now. He's moved his business from the East Coast, the Carolinas, over to California, which I see your eyebrows raise appropriately. Being a California employer is absolutely no joke. I have an employee in California myself, so I get to test out all my best advice in that way. But essentially, we had to finally say in the development of his handbook, because the handbook is a large and comprehensive project. That's probably the biggest project an employer takes on, and that's why we're happy to be there to guide. But finally, we said, why don't we just pull these policies that you're not ready to decide on yet? And let's get the rest of the handbook out to the team. We can always update it later because we really want things to go out again in the most natural way for the business and the business owner as they are today. If we overcomplicate it by including information that we're not ready to follow through on, then that just does a disservice to our team. So let's pull that information. Let's get the rest of it out. It's good stuff. It's a good guide for your employees. It's a great guide for your leaders. No need to worry about updating later. And I think that's one of the key things that I want to share with small business leaders too. Just don't worry about making all the decisions at once. Just move through what feels natural to work on. You know, of course, we have a methodical way of looking at HR and auditing HR practices, but really just focus on one thing, make one small decision, keep on moving, come back to it when you're ready.
And it definitely evolves over time as your organization grows and changes, like revisiting things, updating handbooks, realizing, you know, it's all a work in process. But, you know, I think that takes pressure off too, to just be like, okay, we can work at like, this is sort of that in accounting, we have like the just in time,
yes,
you know, I mean, or, you know, any type of process stuff, you know, sometimes you get things done just in time for when you need them. It's great when we can be prepared, but don't worry if you're not, there's opportunities to work on it as you need, and designing and finding somebody who can work with you. So like you are an outsourced HR firm and, or HR Answers is not you. You're the owner.
Glad it's not just me anymore. 5 years in, I'm glad to have a team.
Your team's great. So the with outsourced HR firms, how do you see them helping businesses grow?
Sure. Yeah. So maybe remember way back in time in the beginning of our conversation, we talked about the different functions in HR. So you can outsource different pieces of your HR function or keep them in-house. And so, for example, outsourcing the onboarding function, which is completing paperwork. That's what onboarding is. Orientation is training, onboarding is paperwork and documents. You can outsource onboarding through a payroll company, right? You can do electronic all the way up and through the I-9, right? So it's fantastic. You can outsource onboarding. You can outsource payroll to a PEO. I know you recently did some great videos on the PEO option and a great provider that you've come in contact with. PEO is a great way to outsource benefit design and payroll, and also be able to plug in some of the rules and regulations pieces too. PEOs are a great option to outsource a bundle. Other ways that you might outsource HR functions is by hiring a headhunter or a recruiter for a key position in your company. That's outsourced HR. And then another piece of it, so that kind of where we live at HR Answers is the outsourcing of HR strategy design and HR employee relations. And so, you know, we really focus on providing our clients with comprehensive HR function analysis. So we audit and analyze each part of their HR foundation. So we might even be looking at their payroll platform and looking at their HR information system to say, how are you using this? Are you maximizing it? We don't offer payroll services, but we can weigh in from an HR expert perspective on whether or not that seems to get us where we need to go from an HRIS or payroll platform perspective. Same thing with the benefit side. We coordinate and collaborate with our clients' brokers to make sure that their employees feel cared for and informed when it comes to benefits, but we don't design benefits. That's for brokers to do. And then you can outsource projects in HR too. So we do a lot of projects where we build employee handbooks, or we complete a comprehensive HR analysis and HR audit that we call the HR Quick Start. So, you know, those are some of the ways that you can sort of pluck out a piece of HR and outsource it to a provider, whether it's a, you know, individual function provider like we do, or maybe more like a PEO where it's a one-stop shop.
I think this is really helpful for people because the when you're thinking, okay, I need HR help now, like it gives them maybe a little bit more language to having a conversation with potential providers if you're interviewing multiple people too,
Yep.
so that you can be more informed and equipped to have that conversation. And do I really need help with designing this whole structure from the beginning? Or
Mhm.
do I just need an employee handbook right
Right.
now? Or
Yep.
do I actually need help coaching like through difficult
Mhm.
employee relations issues? So when
Yep.
you guys are going and thinking about this and kind of talking to the people who are watching at this point,
Yeah.
like this is what I want you to take away. Is like, I mean, I have lots of great takeaways here, but like be equipped with knowing more what you know. Now HR professionals are going to be more expert in this, but at least when you come informed to the table, you can have a better
Mhm.
success in hiring somebody who's going to really fit your needs.
Right.
Because I see sometimes people trying to hire something, but really they didn't know what they were trying to hire for in the
Right.
beginning. And then they're unhappy.
Right.
And that's not what we want. And when we're
Right.
spending money on stuff, we want it to be ultimately getting us to what our end result, what we really want.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah.
I like that from a finance perspective. We get
Yeah.
some return.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really thank you for giving us a little bit more clarity on that, because that's
Sure.
helpful. Um, so what other questions should people ask if they're interviewing for HR? They're thinking about hiring somebody, or just when they're trying to determine what they need internally. Do you have any questions that people should be asking themselves?
Yeah, I think when you're looking for, an outsourced provider, it's great if you can find an HR consultant or a company that has worked with clients in your industry. Well,
Hmm.
it's not like the end all be all. It's really good to have the opportunity to work with an HR professional that really understands the types of specific questions that come up in your business, because not that HR is as complex as something like a medical profession, but I want to use it as an example. Doctors are doctors. They can help you. Any doctor can probably help you in an emergency. But if you need a cardiologist, you go to a cardiologist. If you need a podiatrist, you go to a podiatrist, and your cardiologist is not going to look at your foot probably, right? Unless it's a circulatory issue, maybe. But so for HR people, when we're hiring an HR outsource solution, we do want to try to align with someone who has an understanding of our industry or our geography. So have you worked with clients in this state before? Do you have experience working with businesses this size, whether you're very small or very large? There are different and unique pressures on different size businesses. So those are great questions to ask. And then, of course, you want to work with somebody that has a great background in terms of their own education and credentials. There are lots of different options out there. Well, a couple right now. So, Society for HR Management has a certification option, as does the HR Certification Institute, or HRCI. So having a certification is a great benchmark for a small business owner to say this person probably knows their stuff,
Mhm.
had to stay up in the industry. And then just looking for someone who has flexible options for support, or support that meets your needs at that time. And you already mentioned that. A lot of HR consulting or outsourcing firms will only offer the option, for example, to work together all the time, like what I call going all in, right? So work with us all the time. Maybe there's a monthly fee that you pay for that. And the business may or may not need that option. And so when you're looking at the help that you need, do you really need someone all the time, in your helping to sort of be there to guide and coach and train and do some administrative HR work? Or do you just need help with a project?
Mhm.
One of the things that we've found really helpful for small business owners is the option to just have a retainer package. And so that's something that over the years we built out, because we wanted to be responsive to the way business changes, especially right now in this economy. Folks aren't feeling as certain as before in terms of what their business finances look like, who they're hiring, and what that looks like. So having an option where you can simply call on your HR provider when needed is a great thing to ask about too. Do you have something that's more on call?
Yeah, that's good to know, because you could get locked into something that could be more expensive, and
Yes.
then you might need it, you might not.
Yep.
But understanding really like how much you need at this point in time is
Exactly.
I mean, there's always like HR stuff that can come up, but if you have, a team of
Yeah.
2, do you need like full blown, like,
No.
on-call support all the time of your HR professionals? It might not be the time. Maybe
No, probably not. Yeah, we really try to shy away from working with people, and that's what we call a full service model, until they have at least 10 to 15 employees at a bare minimum.
And that's a really good benchmark for people to keep in mind too. And
Sure.
then you might be able to like use some HR services, but just use them at the level that you need for the
as
time.
needed basis or project basis. Yeah.
Yeah,
Good.
that's really helpful, Nikki.
Sure.
Well, did we not cover anything that you're like, I really wanted to get this point?
No, I appreciate the opportunity to give folks an overview of what falls into the bucket of HR. It's kind of a complicated and messy bucket sometimes, but I just say, kudos to anyone out there that is working right now to build a team, working as a small business leader, entrepreneur in this particular environment, economy, and time in the world is like no other. And I've been in HR for over 20 years. And it is unique and it continues to evolve. So hats off to anybody who's sticking with it. And it's great to have wonderful service providers and folks in our network like you, Hannah, too, that we know we can rely on for good support and advice as things continue to change.
Yeah. I mean, I'm being an employer right now is a challenge. So if you can help mitigate your stress, mitigate your risk, mitigate anything by bringing on professionals to help, it makes a lot of sense. And use the resources that are available.
Yeah.
Point in time. So, well, we'll put Nikki, we'll put your information in the description box below. So if anybody wants to get a hold of you, we can mention. Is there anything you want to mention on how people can find you?
We have a budding YouTube channel that it's on our priority list to be working on this year. So we'll continue to show up over there a little bit with Hannah's encouragement, of course.
Go and subscribe too.
Thanks.
I'll put the link for that for sure.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. But most often, if you want to chat HR, you can find me on LinkedIn, and then you can also visit our website. We have over 5 years of blogging content, which I know blogs are starting to feel a little old fashioned, but if you go to the search box, you can enter any HR term. You'll probably find an article with some resources that could be helpful. So I invite folks to visit our website and look into some of those free resources that are there too.
Awesome. And you have a pretty consistent newsletter that has a lot of
once a month. Yep. Always once a month for sure. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely, if you want to keep in touch with Nikki, get onto the newsletter list because there's lots of good content in there. So thank you. That's another great resource. So
great.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, happy to talk HR with you. Take it easy.
All right. Bye. All right, you guys. So isn't she awesome? Yes. She answers tons of questions. Super helpful. Thank you so much, Nikki, for taking the time. And remember, if you want to get in touch with her, we've put links in the description box below. So go and grab those if you want to get in touch with Nikki or if you just want to check out her YouTube channel. All right. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.